Hello, good morning, LinkedIn community. I know this video is going to be on the YouTube and on our website. Today's episode is actually episode number 25. I can't believe that this is 25th episode of Bad Boss with Anya Soto. Bad Boss was created to speak to different level professionals about what makes someone a bad boss and how can we help them be a better boss. So I have today Mike. Mike is a very special guest to me personally. He's been a huge advocate of my work, has made many valuable introductions for me, which shows me he really cares. And when we talk about leadership, to me, one of the main things that I look for when we talk about leadership potential is, do they only care about themselves and the business, or do they care about their people? Because that's to me the biggest differentiator. Also, what's special about Mike is that he works with CEOs. He's been a CEO, he's a chair with Vistage. He leads groups of CEOs, he coaches CEOs, he unlocks their potential. And I don't know, you just became a friend and a mentor to me. And I'm so excited to speak with you, Mike.
Same here, Anya. I love the way you think about the world, so I'm super excited to be on this today with you.
Thank you. I also want to mention that you're a father of three adult daughters and you're married to your best friend for over 33 years. How lucky.
Very, very lucky. Yeah, very
Yeah.
fortunate.
I know. I'm also married to my best friend, which can be difficult sometimes, but it's the best life, you know.
Yeah.
So Mike runs a Vistage group in Maine, New Hampshire. So if you're looking to actually join a group of CEOs and leaders, I would highly recommend you reach out to him. Today conversation is going to be interesting. And I want to start with actually the first conversation you and I had. We connected about, I think, over a year ago now, and we jumped on the phone, and you were from a get-go super vulnerable with me. You shared with me about your life. You shared with me about your journey, your professional journey, your personal journey, about your family, which allowed me space to share with you who I am and what I believe about the work. And it's funny because I speak to hundreds of CEOs a year, but I remember that conversation so vividly. So what makes it important for you, Mike? Like, I'm just curious, like, why did you do that?
Well, when I was 40 years old, I took over as president of Russ Athletic Team Sports, my dream job, and I was fired less than 15 months later. And that experience was soul crushing. And at the end of it, after I did my own sort of, ruminating over it, a couple people in leadership say to me, "Hey, Mike, a couple things. You got to really be careful about your body language. You got to be careful about your emotional intelligence when you're running a company like this," and so on. But what really struck me was the employees that worked for me. It was about 120 total, and the company was much bigger than that. The feedback they gave me was, "Mike, I couldn't believe as a president that you would dive into the business, go into the mechanics of it, talk to the people." All this feedback was how powerful and how meaningful it was to them, and yet I was so focused on what I consider the profit and loss of the business because I thought that was the most important
Mm,
thing. And so when I left that company, I went to Yankee Candle and met a lady named Dora, expert, and she taught me the power of being vulnerable to a point. And I was so afraid of that because of my prior experience, my adoption fears. And she slowly helped me start to think about how do you go about this in a way that you get comfortable with. And I started realizing the more I shared without getting into like just totally getting crazy
yeah.
with it, the more people came towards me versus going away, which I thought would happen. And
Mm,
so the power of this was just simply just sharing stories. Tell me your story. And it was, how was your weekend? And the employees just started coming more towards and starting to want to learn more. And I want to learn more about them. And the business performance started going up. And I started realizing, how do I harness that? That was a golden moment. I was 41, 42.
I love that. And I think we talk a lot about it, right? It comes back to like that trust element because
Mm-hmm.
you hear it everywhere. It's like, I have an open door policy. We have an open door policy. Anybody can talk to anybody. And you know me say, like, so how many people came? Nobody. Because it's like you can't demand trust. I see leaders
Right.
go and say, you just, guys, trust me. You just have to trust me. I
Right.
got this. And people are like, why do I have to trust you? I don't trust you, because trust takes time. But that vulnerability, I think, is powerful. And I do want to talk about that PNL, because I also have a belief, as someone who works with companies, and often I'm brought in, but the top leaders, and I work with CFO and CEO, I also feel a lot of pressure on knowing PNL, being able to articulate specific line items on the P&L that are connected to culture, belonging, inclusion, all of those things. And I feel like I'm constantly convincing C-suite executives on the importance of their people. So I'm so happy you're saying that P&L has two parts to it. So
Yeah,
can you
I've
share?
always, yeah, I uncovered this as I've been working with different types of companies that, in order for the business to operate, you've got to make sure that the profitability meets the expectations wherever the owners are, obviously.
Yeah.
But the other side of it that I found was really powerful and would enhance people's ability to give you more in the company was the way to think about it is the people and listening side. And I
Mhm.
think as a leader, you got to balance both of those because at the end of the day, you got to deliver the financial results. But if people feel like they're valued, they feel like they belong, you're listening to them and you're helping them along, the capacity they will give you is extraordinary. And I'll give you an example. There's a
Yeah.
company that I was working with struggling with this remote hybrid environment. They had a very, very valuable marketing employee who left the state they were in, went to go a different state during COVID, and they felt the production of the person was going down. And they reached out to me, we had a conversation, and I said, instead of having a confrontation with this person because you love them dearly, how do you connect with them? Like, what is their story? What's going on? And the short story was what he uncovered was that she had just had a child, and the daycare costs were extraordinary in the state she was living in. And she was very candid. She had a trusting relationship. She said, "Look, I make 50,000, daycare's 24,000, taxes out. I can't afford this. The math doesn't work for me." But she was so valued and he so appreciated her sharing the story that he carved out a part-time role for her where she still got benefits. And he
Mhm.
said to me 6 months later, he said, "Mike, I am getting more out of her than I did when she was a full-time employee." He said her capacity is extraordinary now because she feels valued. She feels like I listened. And so I think that's where a lot of business leaders lose out is they don't spend time understanding the people
Yeah.
that are working for them and like what's happening in their world that could be impacting the way they're behaving and performing. And once you unlock that, I think the capacity you'll find will come out of existing employees more so than I keep thinking you need more employees. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times.
I agree. And I love the idea of, like, instead of being confrontational, can we get curious?
Yeah,
Because, like,
curious.
what
Yep.
is happening, right, in that
Yep.
employee's life that has changed so drastically? Because,
Yep.
again, if it is someone who is valuable, who's always been performing historically, and I agree with you. I say, when you don't care about people, they'll give you their bare minimum.
Yeah.
They'll clock in and out. And it's like
Yep.
the quiet quitting is, it's like we joke that I actually quit 2 years ago. My body is still here, but
Yeah.
like I've quit 2 years ago. So I could not agree with you more that when people feel, and we talk about it a lot, valued, like I have a contribution to make, right, something that I do actually matters to the company, like they're seeking out my perspective, they're asking me about my thoughts and my ideas, and it's like, and it doesn't mean they'll make a decision, but at least they're curious about what I think, and like, where do I come from? I always like to say, we do this exercise, it's really cool, where let's say you and your wife went to an event, and
Right.
it was like a 3-hour event, and you came home, and I said, okay, what was it like? And you would say, oh my God, it was amazing. Like, I met so many people. We danced, we laughed, we joked. And your wife would be like, oh my God, it was horrible. It was so loud. I really didn't enjoy, as an example. It's like two people going through the same experience will have sometimes completely different perceptions of reality.
Right.
Right. So it's like, that's where we, like, instead of making assumptions, like, let's get curious. I always say, I want to see the world through your lens. Like, help me understand how you see the world.
Yeah, I had a guy that reminds me, I had a guy working for me and there was a job opening, which is a promotion. So the feeling employees have is they're always trying to get to the next level. And I only been there a short time. I didn't see him in that role. And so we just spent some time and I'll shorten it for this thing. And at the end of the day, what we came to, we built a trusting relationship over the 6 months we'd worked together. And he said to me, he said, Mike, I feel comfortable saying this. And he was heading up operations, customer service, and a lot of areas that we were trying to execute the P&L on this
Mhm.
side. And he just didn't seem to realize how important it was to get that. Long time owned the company, 20 years, about 45 or so. And after all this time we spent together, he goes, Mike, he said, I want to be in the room when the big decisions get made. And he used the analogy of the Staples red button. He said, when that red button is the room and a big decision gets made, but I don't want to be the one that makes the decision. I just want an opportunity to have my voice be heard because I think I can offer a lot of value to the organization. And what came out of that was I believe in this idea of scope enhancement versus promoting people beyond their capabilities. And so he was
Mm.
brilliant at operations, customer service, and that sales area of support.
Mhm.
And our European operation was struggling in those areas. And so we said, hey, don't worry about the fact that we're not going to offer you this job because he was freaked out. He thought he literally would get fired if he
Yeah.
didn't try. And we gave him that opportunity. And I got to tell you, Anya, that guy never missed an opportunity to make the business perform at the elite level that we needed to. And interesting, he's a big Tom Brady Patriots quarterback fan at the time. And I used to fight to get stuff done. I could then walk into his office and I would just knock on the door and then say, yeah, what's up? And I would say, hey, it's Tom Brady time. And he knew that meant I got to do what I got to do to get, and even
Yeah.
if he didn't get it done, I trusted him. He trusted me. And that guy became by far the best employee we had once he realized I have a lot of value here. I trust that Mike's not going to be mad at me because I'm not going to be wanting this
Yeah.
promotion. And I just think that scope enhancement, keep me in my comfort zone, but expand it versus trying to put you somewhere you're not. They fail and everyone gets mad at the employee. And I think that's a critical thing leaders need to
Yeah.
be careful about.
Yeah, and that's what I see with promotions, right? Again,
Mm-hmm.
like Tom Brady probably won't make the best coach, most
Right,
likely. Like
right.
he's a player. And that's why where we like promote people instead of like I love it's almost like it's horizontal, right? It's like
Yeah,
I'm gonna enhance your scope, I'm gonna expand your scope, and we talked about it, expand what you're already brilliant at
yeah,
instead of making you do something that like you're not ready for or you're not going to do well. And that's where I see so many, especially in the tech companies, where brilliant technologists and specialists get promoted in the leadership role and they fail and their teams fail. And now not only we have a shitty boss whose people are quitting, but we also lost an amazing
yeah.
technologist. Like it's a lose lose.
Yeah.
So I don't know, how do we create that capacity, I wonder, in leaders?
Well, one of the cool things out of a situation like this, to answer your question, is I believe there are employees in the organization that I define them as culture carriers. And
Mhm.
these aren't always senior leaders, but these are people in the organization that really do want to do the right thing for the right reasons. They want to grow personally, professionally, and they are just good quality people. And when you do the work, which we talked about front, which is to
Mhm.
spend time being vulnerable, you know who these people are. And
Yeah.
so, to answer your question, you go spend time like I did with this gentleman, and we spent a lot of time together. He then became the culture carrier, so that when a difficult decision had to be made, or we had to do a downsize, whatever took place, good, bad, or indifferent, everybody would go to him and say, "Hey, are we going to be okay? Or what do you think of this?" He was at a manager level, not a senior VP, but people trusted him,
Yeah.
and he could then say, "We're going to be fine. Mike knows what he's doing, or the company's heading in the right direction. It's going to be okay."
Mm.
And so your ability to get those kinds of people, the two or three, the culture carries in the organization, to get to the point where they become an extension of you as a leader,
Yeah.
they then start elevating themselves. They take their teams, elevate their teams. And candidly, what ends up happening is the senior leaders who are sometimes resistant to adapting to what's going on,
Yeah.
they get forced to because their team starts to perform at a level and they don't want to be embarrassed, so they embrace it too. It's really interesting,
Mm.
almost reverse, where a lot of people try to go to the senior leaders
Yeah.
Like you were describing before, it's like you just keep banging on them. It's like, no, I'm going to go deeper into the organization. I ask, hey, tell me your story. I ask 3 questions. I bring little orange notebooks, brown, whatever they are, and I just walk around and ask 3 simple questions. And you start to figure out where the biggest roadblocks are in the company. And you'll be shocked. They're typically very small things, but they're irritants. And when you
Yeah.
start solving those irritants for people, they start to level up and they start to add capacity themselves. I just think it's almost like bottoms up versus trying to force it down this
Yeah.
way. It
Yeah.
works very well. But
Mm-hmm.
find those culture carriers that can tell you the real nits and gnats of what's going on and what's irritating people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you start unlocking those, I'll give you an example if you got a minute. I don't know if we have
Yeah.
time to
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
was
love
working.
examples.
I was working for a company, and the customer service people were really frustrated, and the salespeople were. And I uncovered what was going on by asking 3 simple questions, which are: what do we do really well? We need to do more of. What are we doing? We should stop doing and do less of. And then finally, what can I do for you personally and professionally? And leaders get scared to ask that question because they're afraid of the answer. But you're
Mm-hmm.
going to find people going to ask you, like the customer service team, per person, individual conversation said, well, Mike, if you could fix the phone system so that when the corporate phone rings, my computer, when I'm on the line with a customer with an order, doesn't go down. And I said, well, one more time, what happens? They walked me over there and they had a customer was calling in with an order and they were putting their order in the system. Then the corporate phone rang just for the company. And for some reason, it shut down the phone until they connected the phone to the person they were trying to get hold of. And I thought, wow, how long has this been going on? 2 years. Nobody did anything. Nobody said anything. Everybody was intimidated by the senior VP of IT. And so I was like, wow. So I went to go see Paul and I told him what's going on. He goes, that is impossible. Can't be happening. And I said, Paul, you might want to get your rear end over to customer service and just watch it.
Experience it.
It was fixed like this.
Yeah.
And he was like, why didn't someone tell me?
Mm-hmm. And goes back to lack of trust, and that's what I
Yes.
see a lot with people, where we go in and people will share things with us that are so easy to fix, but they never shared it with their leaders because they were afraid of losing their job or losing their reputation or retaliation against them. Power dynamics, all of these things. That's why
Yeah.
people sometimes are like, wow, I can't believe why they said that to you, why didn't they say that to me? And I always say, listen, don't take it personally, but we have to acknowledge the power dynamic. Like if you're writing their checks, you cannot guarantee them confidentiality and safety. You
Yeah.
just can't. I'm sorry, because I'm not going to risk it. I'll just suck it up and keep doing my work. That's the power, I think, of that coaching and maybe consulting work, that you really, when you build that trust, people will share with you like what are the blockers. And I agree with you. Instead of, because when we're looking at like, okay, employee job satisfaction, right? I do a lot of like this assessment. It's like,
Right. Right.
why would people stay and why would people quit? So we can kind of look at the risk element. And it's so much easier to fix those little annoying things. And it's like, remove the annoyance and people will like, you don't need to add anything else. Remove
Right.
the little annoying things, like
Right.
make my work suck less,
Yeah.
and that's it. So in conclusion, we're at the 18 minutes. I'm just
Yep.
going over like, what did I feel like I had so many things.
I know I took
I
you off track. Sorry.
No, no, that's why I'm like, I trust where it goes. And I do think it's so valuable because we have so many like different stories to share. Maybe let's share. Would you be willing to share that metaphor of a trampoline? I think that would be good ending to our call. Like, because again, you work with C-suite executives, you know how important that peer community is. Like having the space where I can actually be myself and really
Right.
share what's going on, where we don't have those spaces in, like, we don't have those places at work because we have to be the leader who got it, and sometimes to admit that I don't got it. I don't think I got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So a lot of people talk about networking, which I find very transactional as we go forward in the workplace today.
Mhm.
And if you look at the statistics that came out, Corn Ferry had some statistics that only 17% of workers see work as a core identity, which is way down from historicals, obviously, right? But I think
Mhm.
when you go build, and I call it a personal trust community, and it's those people that hold you accountable, but don't judge you. And I think you
Mhm.
got to find these people in your life, physically, intellectually, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. And the way I think about it, trying to explain to people is like take a trampoline, and these people in that circle that I just mentioned are people that hold the trampoline. And back in the day, trampolines were created. A lot of people got injured on them. They started putting walls up on there. It's no different than a company. If you don't have the freedom to be who you are, and those walls are there, you don't get the best out of you. So take the walls down. Have this trampoline held by people that are in your community, that this trust community you've built. And
Mhm.
every day you're bouncing on the middle of that trampoline, but some days you're going to try to bounce off the edge. But this trust community moves the trampoline so you're always centered. The minute you keep going, every time you keep going to the edge zone, you're doing it too much. That community stops the trampoline and says, "Time out. What's going on?" And because it's a trust community and not just this network, they're going to ask you questions. You're going to feel very comfortable saying, "Well, I'm having this problem, this, that, or whatever," and they're right there with you. And sometimes in life, if you do this at a younger age, as you start to move up in your life, yes, maybe that trampoline gets heavier, it gets taller, might need different people. But I think finding that personal trust community that supports you
Mhm.
in your physical efforts, your
Yeah.
emotional, intellectual, social, and spiritual is a good way to think about it.
Yeah, I love that. I love metaphors. I think
Yeah,
metaphors are really powerful in coaching. And
same
there's
here.
also something about permission to move on,
Yeah, love it.
permission to let go of people, because we feel so guilty sometimes,
Yeah,
right? We're like, but they're my people. I spend all of
yeah,
my 20s or 30s or 40s with them. Our kids played sports together. And sometimes we just, I don't know, like, I don't want to, because again, you see even my own guilt, but I'm like, it's not
yeah,
that you outgrow them. The trampoline, your trampoline might get too heavy for them. And
yeah,
you just don't feel like they've got the trampoline that you need.
yeah,
The elasticity is not there as we age.
right.
So, and I think that's where the permission to keep finding your people and redefining your circles, because your circle might change and that's okay. And I think knowing that, like, that's okay.
Yeah, it's like
you
the
know
algorithms. We talk about the algorithms we have in social media. Well, think about the algorithms in your life too. It's who are you spending time with, paying attention to, reading, listening to. Start changing your algorithm, and it'll change the way you view the world, and it'll lift you up. Is another way to think about it.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Mike. Again,
Yeah,
if you
thank
guys are in
you.
Maine, New Hampshire, Mike also coaches leaders who like are ready to like unlock their potential, go to that next level. He's a great trampoline holder. Thank you for being again my mentor, my friend, my colleague, my peer. I'm so excited to keep partnering with you on different projects. And yeah, thank you for doing the work that you do. I think it's super, super valuable, and I wish you all the success.
Yeah, right back at you. Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. Very honored to be on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Take care.